There have been so many accomplishments under this administration, it can be difficult to list them in a distilled way. There continue to be a lot of issues that Americans are facing every day, even as we see extraordinary economic news. 500,000 jobs just created in the last month.
Well, that's the thing. None of it seems to accrue to his benefit.
Well, people say that, but then this president has exceeded expectations again and again, politically and functionally.
Pete Buttigieg, President Joe Biden's transportation secretary, is providing a little bit of spin to the reality that most Americans do not, in fact, feel the positive impact of Joe Biden's policies. And I think it's worth getting into, especially as Biden is set to address the nation with the State of the Union. Cenk, before I get to the details on how Americans really feel about the Biden administration, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I like how he's accomplished so much, it's difficult to list. Well, give it a shot, big guy. See how it turns out for you.
So we'll go. Well, actually, we do have that video where he attempts to list the accomplishments of the Biden administration. Of course, void of any important caveats, which we will provide. But stay tuned for that. I think what's important is to kind of fill you in on what polling suggests in regard to the American people and how they feel about Biden's administration. So there was a poll done by the Washington Post and ABC News, and here's what they found. The poll finds that 62% of Americans think Biden has accomplished not very much or little or nothing during his presidency, while 36% say he has accomplished a great deal or a good amount. On many of Biden's signature initiatives, from improving the country's infrastructure to making electric vehicles more affordable to creating jobs, majorities of Americans say they do not believe he has made progress. And I'll explain why in just a moment, but unsurprisingly, if you break down this poll based on party lines, you will notice people, of course, go into their corners. But the important thing to focus on, in my opinion, is how independent voters feel. So if you take a look at this graph, it'll show you that the majority of Democrats, 77%, do in fact feel that Biden has accomplished a great deal or a good amount. Unsurprisingly, only 7% of Republicans feel the same way. But when you go to independents, only 32% feel that Biden has done a great deal or good amount. 66% do not feel that way. They feel not very much or little or nothing.
Yeah, so let's start to break it down. Look, there's two things that are at play here. One is marketing. Has Joe Biden pushed the things he has done strongly enough, loudly enough? So for example, the reality is often in the middle, and in this case, it's very much so, because there are some things that Biden has done a very good job with. The over 500,000 new jobs added was amazing. Unemployment is at a record low since 1969. So is he doing a good enough job of touting that? No, he's not. Something that the Biden administration is sorely lacking, and it's a Democratic problem at large and has been for decades, is someone loud. They're constantly whispering. And Joe Biden will lean in and go,
oh, he loves to whisper.
No, seriously, this is not a joke. Well, of course it's not a joke. Why do you keep saying that after every sentence? Anyway, so they need someone to, like Trump, for all of his downsides, he would say, me get you more employment, more jobs. And people heard, geez, I guess he got us more jobs. And the Democrats would go, no, he didn't. And then no one would get hurt. So it's definitely partly a marketing problem. The other problem though is, and I think the majority of it is substance. So they didn't actually pass bills that help you, they passed bills that help corporations. We're gonna do more of that in a second. But the third slight issue, kind of an asterisk, is timing. So this link to the substance. So for example, on drugs, they say, well, it's weird, American people are saying that their drug prices are not lower. Well, that's not at all weird, because their drug prices are not lower. They passed a law saying about 10 drugs or so their price can be regulated. The great majority of which happens in 2026.
Yes.
That's 3 years from now. Only one, the insulin prices kicked in, and that was a month ago. So of course nobody thinks their drug prices are lower, because almost none of the drug prices are lower. And in fact, they protected thousands of drugs from being challenged in terms of their price. So it actually is counterproductive. And then, but everybody in Washington is always flummoxed. They're always like, well, I don't get it. Like, how come people don't love Biden? Look at the numbers of independents that Anna pointed out, 32%. That's the most important number. then look at people like Pete Buttigieg on television, and it's wall-to-wall Buttigieg from the Democratic side and the mainstream media side. And you'll see the biggest disparity of your life. Everybody, all the pundits will tell you, oh, Biden's great, oh, he's getting accomplished, so it's historic. But the independents show you, no, it hasn't affected our lives at all.
Yeah, the thing with Buttigieg is he is part of the Biden administration. So of course he's going to put a spin on the successes of the Biden administration or lack thereof. And I say lack thereof because at the end of the day, what they like to tout is their infrastructure bill, which is, again, we've talked about this a million times, a corporate handout because it relies on public-private partnerships. What does that mean? That means US taxpayer money, meaning our money, will go toward corporations, will enrich corporations, which will, by the way, likely pad their pockets and inflate costs to do these infrastructure projects. Let's also keep in mind that let's say this was completely publicly funded, publicly built, government jobs instead of relying on corporations. When it comes to infrastructure, clearly Americans are not gonna feel the benefits of that right away because it takes time to build and improve the infrastructure. Okay, so to kind of hang your hat on that is ridiculous because Americans base the success of your policies by looking at their own lives to see whether or not they've seen any material improvement. And for most Americans, they have not. The child tax credits, which Biden swore up and down he was gonna make it permanent, those expired, okay? Americans certainly felt that. So when you talk about, oh, the drug prices, you're so right, Cenk. It's Medicare that would be able to negotiate the prices for 10 pharmaceutical drugs and it wouldn't go into effect until 2026. How are you gonna tout that? Come on. But let's give you some more.
By the way, the mainstream media figured out how to tout it. When it passed, every single outlet called it historic reform. That's a joke, total and utter joke. It's meant to actually cover up the incredible abuses of the drug companies on all other drugs.
Now, let's also talk a little bit about how Americans have little confidence in either Biden or the Republican Party. So if you think that this is just a damning indictment of the Democratic Party, you'd be mistaken because it turns out that most of them do not have much faith in Kevin McCarthy's leadership in the House either. So just under 2 in 10 Americans have a great deal or good amount of confidence in the speaker to make the right decisions for the country. That's what the question was. 71% have just some or no confidence at all. Similarly high 72% say they lack such confidence in congressional Republicans. Look, there is a clear breakdown in our political system. This isn't turns out most voters prefer Democrats over Republicans or vice versa. No, they are upset with, and they should be upset with, the lack of leadership that we've seen from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. On the looming fight over the debt limit, most Americans are closer to Biden's position than the GOP's, and most dismiss Republican plans to investigate the government's weaponization as political, okay? So they look at the Republican plans to either cut or privatize Social Security, and they're like, we don't want that. It's almost as if Americans just want some financial stability in their lives. And if you give them that, they are far more likely to support you and your administration. They have not received that from the Biden administration, despite what you hear from Pete Buttigieg and other members of the administration.
Yeah, so the media can't figure out 2 phenomenon here. They're like, number one, well, they don't seem to like Biden or the Republicans, so which side are you guys on? No, it's super clear. Look at all the polling, okay? And this poll's not alone. You have about 36% that are against Biden no matter what, hardcore Republicans, you're never gonna move them. And about 36% of Democrats who listen to NPR, read New York Times, watch CNN and MSNBC, and you're never gonna move them. They're gonna think that Biden's a demigod no matter what, okay? So that leaves about 30% of the country that decides all of the elections, okay?
Yep.
And so that 30% dislikes both sides. And the media scratches their head, why? Well, I got news for you, here's why. Because the middle is correct. And they're not at all moderate in the terms of how Washington reporters label things. No, they're pissed because nothing ever gets done. And so this also leads to the second mystery for the reporters, And you're welcome, Washington reporters, for deciphering these things that I think are relatively obvious. So why are even Democratic voters dissatisfied with Joe Biden? Because in the Washington world, they're like, he passed all these bills and they were all historic. I know, because we did giant headlines calling them historic. So why aren't people satisfied? Because look at the bills, you knuckleheads. All of the bills give everything to corporations first, and then if you're lucky, the voters come in dead last. Now with Republicans, the corporations come in first and last. That's the only thing that the Republican bills serve. The voters are never considered in Republican bills.
Only when it comes to culture war narratives.
Yeah, culture war, sure.
Yeah,
but on economic issues, right? So that's why you have 30% of the country that's in the middle that decides elections going, I don't like either side. And you keep telling me Biden did something, but it has not affected my life 1 inch. And you're right, you're absolutely right. And all these corporate media goons are totally wrong and trying to trick you by saying, oh, he did amazing things and you should like corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans. No, you're right to loathe both. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.